Okay, we're going to give everybody a refresher here on what it takes to get your documentation set up for fall in your combine on your 2600 or 2630 display. With that, we'll start in the bottom right-hand corner on the menu key down here. We'll click on that. We'll have our icons come up, but we're going to go for the GS2 Pro icon, or it could say GS3 Pro, depending on which display you have. In there now we can see that we've got a page that we've got our guidance and mapping page and different things like that on the side, and we've also got our setup page, and right up on top here, setup, we've also got summary, activations, and memory. Anyway, we're going to be working on the setup tab. One thing a guy can do when you go to set up documentation, if you know all the fields that you have to put in required data, I mean, we can just go to the respective tabs over here on the side, resources, equipment, and documentation, and put those in there and do it that way. But we're just going to go through the actual setup sequence, what it would take. Over here, we're just going to click on documentation. We could do guidance or whatever else it is that we're doing, and it would go ahead and walk us through those steps too. Okay, now you're going to notice down on the bottom we've got an accept key that became highlighted when we put the check in there. We've also got a little asterisk with indicates a required field, and you'll see what we mean as we go through. So I'm going to hit the accept key here. Okay, here we've got some of those asterisks up here, red ones. Whenever we're doing documentation, we have to have a client, so we'll go ahead and grab one of them. We'll have to have a farm, and we have to have a field. One of the other things we've got to have is a task in there. So right now documentation is off. We'll just click on the box. In there we'll have harvest. So now we've got a task. We've got all our required fields. Double check in here that your crop season is right. It should automatically change, but just double check that. Down here you'll see we've got auto detect field exit. What that's going to do is I leave that field and it's going to give me a warning that do I want to come in here and change maybe my farm, my field, my client, whatever it would be. To do this though, we have to have boundaries. And that's got to be done probably in Apex, you know, or we could have done it earlier on the display. The easier way is in Apex. But if you've got questions on boundaries and you want to use something like that, get a hold of us and we'll get you through that. With that over here, we've got an exit setup, we've got next step, or when you'll see when we go on to the next page, we can actually back up. So we'll go on to next step. At that time, now we've got our machine icon up here. Like I said a little bit ago, we could have done this right from the menu key down below and hitting GS2 Pro and going into the icons as long as we know what we need. Okay, over here you're going to see machine model. It doesn't have a asterisk in there. We don't have to put something in there. But machine name, we do have to have something there. So I'll go ahead and grab one here. We'll scroll through the list. There we go, 9870. Okay, another thing I want to bring up here. Any of you guys that run swath control with say maybe a sprayer or you're running your row clutches on your planter, you know in here that these dimensions are all very critical. When it comes to documentation, we still should really have them in there. They're not quite so critical. I mean, if you're off a foot or whatever in your documentation, it's not the end of the world. The thing you're going to see, if it's not right, when we look at our coverage map, when you know we'll get to that when we get done here, but we get to our coverage map and maybe on the headland we're seeing a skip and an overlap type of thing, you know, kind of a jagged sawtooth effect on the end of the field. In here in these machine offsets is where we can do it. And we're going to have dimensions from the axle to the dome, from the dome to the say the front of the head or the harvest point, things like that, you know, that we can change in there. So in here, at any rate, I'm not going to put them in, but that's just where we're going to make those changes to make our map turn out right. At that time now, you can see that we can back up a step, go back to that page before, make sure I got everything in there. We'll just go on to the next page, and now we've got our implement, which would be on the machine page. And again, we don't have to have a model name in there, implement model. I'll go ahead and grab one. Implement name, we'll just grab one, put it in there. And again, guys, same thing. In here, we've got change offsets. And again, that's just going to be to make your map turn out the way you want it to look when you're done. Okay, down on the bottom here, we've got overlap control. And overlap control is something that came out about 3 years ago. It's kind of similar somewhat. It resembles, it looks like, feels a little bit like swath control. It's not really swath control, but what it's doing for us is I come up to the headland, and before we always relied on that header height switch, when we raised it up to a certain height, or maybe it was timing, whatever did it on your model, would actually shut that recording off. Well, here, if it's in a place where it knows that it already had combined, and there's coverage map there, it's going to shut it off, shut the recording off for us. So that's kind of what that's about down there. We'll go on to the next page. We'll be on our documentation page then. Okay, very first thing I want to mention on documentation here is right up here. Right now we've got harvest and we've got new. Maybe the last thing you did with this display was you were out planting this spring, or maybe doing the spraying this summer with it. At any rate, we get it all set up, we went through everything, and it won't record for us. The very first thing I want you to do is come to this page. Is all we want to have up here is harvest and new. If we've got harvest and planting, harvest and application, whatever, we've got more than one actual task up there, it will not work. What we would have to do is come down here to where it says remove. If we've got 2 or 3 of them up there, it's going to let me take them off. So we're just going to click and take that off. It's not going to take away your coverage or your actual data from planting or from spraying, but it's just going to remove that task. But what the deal is, if it's got more than one task in there, it doesn't know which one you want to record, because it can only record one. So basically, it don't record anything. So in here, we're going to want to go to change harvest settings, because you can see down here we've got crop and variety listed there, and they've got an asterisk by them. So at any rate, we're just going to click on the crop type, and we got corn. We'll go ahead and grab that. This being a simulator doesn't always work, guys, but if I click on variety here, you'll see I get something undefined. But if you've got your varieties in there, it's going to come up with them for you. Another thing to mention on the page here is we've got variety locator. Variety locator, if you planted in the spring and you mapped all your varieties, we can basically run a variety locator. But before we run variety locator in that combine, we have to take that planting data out of the display, put it into Apex, and in there we can set up variety locator, and then we take our data, put it back into the display. And as we're going across from a different field or a different plot, or maybe the headlands are planted in a different variety, it's automatically going to change those varieties. We're not going to have to come in here and change them as we're combining. So, but like I say, that's something that's got to be done in Apex. And if you got any questions, give us a call, or ask us a question, and we'll get you work through that too. So, with that, we'll just accept. Okay, and now we've got to where we can go on to the next page, or we can back up. We'll go to the next page, and it's going to give us a page saying that setup is complete if you filled and completed out all the required fields with that asterisk in it. And if not, at that time we can back up here and go through them pages, double look, double check again. But at any rate, at this point, we're just going to hit the accept. And right now, we're set up for documentation. One other thing I want to mention to you guys, if you ever get to where documentation isn't working, or I don't care what it is, if it's auto track or it's swath control, any of the programs that we can run on the displays, if we're having a problem with it, I want you to come in here to Diagnostics. We remember this was that main menu key. We hit GS2 Pro, and then we've got the book and the wrench. That's always kind of a diagnostic thing. So we're going to click on that. And in here, normally the default window that comes up is GPS, but we can go into here, and I'm going to pick recording. And what we want to see is if we see something with a no in there, that's why it's not working. Don't be real concerned if you see something says inactive. That just means that it isn't recording right now, and it's probably because we're stopped or whatever. But if we got something with a no, that's going to be the definite reason why it's not recording. Like here we've got field defined, task defined. They have yeses in them. So that's what we need to see to make sure that recording is going to work. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you again is we just went through the setup. In here we've got summary, And this is going to tell us, if for some reason we left something out, right in here I can come and look. It's going to give us our farm, our field, or things like that, and what we're doing. Here again, this simulator, it says we're doing cotton, and we set it up for combine and corn, but like I say, that's kind of the nature of the simulator. Okay, one other thing I wanted to show you is right up here on our mapping icon. If we go into here, there's going to be settings, map settings in here. A couple things we can do in here. One is we can look at foreground, and we can have harvest, or we can have coverage only. But harvest is going to give us the segmented map with how many, with the different colors of what we're getting for a yield. Another thing in here is we can actually come in here if we use this combine for harvesting last fall, this display in the combine, and we didn't actually clear the fields out. Right in here we can clear just this field or all farms and fields. So at any rate, that's just going to clear. And again, this is just going to clear the coverage map. It's not going to clear our written data. So if we've got data that we don't want to lose, we don't have to worry about it. We can't erase it from here. This is just going to take our on-screen coverage map off. So at any rate, I'm going to hit accept down here, and now you can see that we've got our, what a yield map would look like. We can go in here. We can also edit the colors. What color is going to be at what bushel, and how many, what the variation is in there. A lot of guys might have it set, I don't care if it's under 80 bushels. I know what happened there. It probably drowned it out. Or this fall it could be a different story. But just where we can change those legends, that the actual amount in there. So with that, guys, if you got any questions, go ahead and make sure you get a hold of us, and we'll make sure we get them answered for you. So thank you.